Yo, this is Terrance Gaines, aka Brother Tech,
And this is Nica Montford, aka Tech Savvy Diva.
and welcome back to the SnobOS Show, the show for Apple snobs, where we talk all things Apple and then some. We definitely want to thank you for coming back to another episode of the SnobOS Show. We definitely want to thank you for continuing to listen, to continuing to spread the news. We definitely want to appreciate those who have taken it a step further and decided to support the show financially. For that, they get a little bit extra. We just got finished recording our live show that all snobist people get access to. So you get to watch the show live. So if any comments you want to add to the show, most likely they'll actually make it to the show. And in addition to that, you get the show early, so you don't have to wait. These shows come out on Fridays, but if you are part of the snobist community, you get it a little bit earlier. So just a little something to say thank you for supporting the show financially. So having said that, we're going to get right into it and start with our first article. We always start with the lowdown where we talk all things Apple. So we're going to get started and talk about the iPhone 15, specifically the iPhone 15 Pro. There have been people who have been complaining that the iPhone 15 Pro and or the Pro Max have been getting a little hot, so much so to where they are hot to the touch, to where you definitely have to wait for it to cool down, finish whatever it's doing before it actually is actually usable. While no definite words as far as the exact issue as to why some iPhone 15 Pros are overheating, again, we can't tell if this is a um, massive issue or is it just, this is newness. It's the iPhone 15, new launch, new device. People are going to have something to say. Those people, squeaky wheel gets the most oil. We don't know.
Right.
Um, Nevertheless, Apple has put out some possible reasons. And as we talk about a little bit later, has rolled out some software to kind of address the issue. So, first and foremost, Apple, in their response, wanted to make sure people know that it is not a hardware issue, whether it be this new A17 Bionic chip or whether it be the titanium casing. Apple wants to let people know it's not a hardware issue. You don't have to worry about bringing your phone back. You don't have to worry about exchanging for a different phone. This should be something that is software related. One of the things that they may have mentioned or may could be an issue is there's increased background activity based on device transfer. In other words, once you get a new phone, you put it next to your old phone or you restore a backup from iCloud. That takes a lot of time. That puts a lot of processes in motion. And that process may not be finished until way after your phone says transfer complete. It may be running things in the background. It may be running some stuff, in the background that you can't see. You think all your data is there, but it's still trying to finish up. Apple is saying in those times, you could also be using the phone a lot while it's still finishing up that transfer. That could be causing it to heat up. So after the transfer is completely done, your phone should operate at normal operating temperatures. The second one they mentioned was there were some third-party apps that were hogging too much CPU resources. Like I think they mentioned by name, they mentioned Instagram. There was a couple other.
I think it
Uh,
was Uber, but the one that I saw most people talk about was Instagram was basically being a data hog.
right. Uber, Instagram, a couple other ones was being data hogs. Now Apple has worked with those third-party developers for the most part and said, "Hey, what do we got to do to update it to change the app so it doesn't take up all these resources?" They've done that with most of them, but there's still maybe some remaining apps out there depending on what you use. The last thing that Apple mentioned could be the issue is an iOS 17 bug affecting some users. Again, not all users. Like I mentioned, I have a 15 Pro Max, and I don't have this overheating issue. The only time I had an overheating issue was when I was, for example, we talked about our pre-show. I scheduled the wrong time for our pre-show, where we actually start to record. And I was out and about, so I couldn't get back to my computer, but I had to change the time as soon as possible because people were going to start listening in on the show and nothing's
And
happening.
it's like, what's
S-
going God.
Right. So I actually had to get on Chrome on my iPhone, go into our streaming software and actually update the time for the scheduling. Well, when I was doing that, the camera was on, the microphone is on because I'm logging into streaming software and the lights are on. I can see my face like I'm in the middle of nowhere trying to play with the schedule,
Mhm.
so the camera is recording me because it's video software. I felt the phone getting hot when I was doing that because I'm flipping through multiple apps. I'm trying to
You
update this,
doing stuff.
going on YouTube. I got YouTube open in the background. I got this streaming software that's using a mic and a camera at the same time. So all that to say, I was doing a lot of processes and my phone got hot. Soon as I stopped doing that, it went back to normal. So it sounds like I want to believe, I don't have no empirical evidence, but I want to believe that there's something that Apple can do to actually fix this versus it being a hardware issue. Because if it's a hardware issue, then this brand spanking
Not
new
your
phone with this brand
problem.
spanking new titanium metal that they're using, they may have to go back to the drawing board for that. And I don't think
Mhm.
Apple owns no parts of that. So they're like,
Nope.
software, software, software. Just wait, we'll
We can
fix it.
fix it, we promise.
Yeah, yeah. So let us know, if you've got a 15 Pro or Pro Max out there that's overheating, let us know, do some tests, see exactly what you're doing to see if you can replicate that heating issue. But you may not be able to replicate the reheating issue if you have already updated to iOS 17.0.3. So 17.0.3 was released this week,
Mhm.
and according to Mac rumors, they released iOS 17.0.3 update specifically to address the issue of iPhone 15 Pro and iPhone 15 Pro Max overheating. Doesn't really say what um how it fixes it. They just say it fixes it, and then they actually, reference back to the issue where, Uber, Instagram, a couple of these apps were causing a issue with the chip and affecting performance. So I'm thinking maybe this is Apple's side of the software update. First, they reached out to the third party app developers, say, hey, make sure this is up to snuff. And then they went Apple and updated their own stuff to make sure that it captures all those changes.
Mhm.
So again, we'll have to see if 17.0.3 fixes the overheating. Maybe it causes some other issues. But in addition to that, there are some security fixes as well with 17.0.3. It also addresses a kernel vulnerability that couldn't allow an attacker to gain elevated privileges. Apple claims that it is aware of the security flaw that was exploited, and this is their fix as well. So a couple things Apple's working with right now. So what do you think about this whole overheating issue and whether or not Apple can simply just fix it with a software bug update, or do you think there may be a little bit more to it?
I don't know, time will tell. Anytime you make a significant change, specifically around the hardware casing itself, if the, edge cases, aren't really tested, then it could potentially be a problem because, like you said, this is a very narrow issue. I won't say narrow issue, but it seems to be only to specific users. So to me, it says that, there is an issue. Some people are having it. It doesn't appear to be a huge number of people that are having it. So again, I would probably side with them to say that it's likely software because if it was an hardware issue, then it would be more widespread than it is now. And people are specifically, troubleshooting and diagnosing their own issues. And it's like, whenever I use this app, then it
Mhm.
goes up. Or when I'm not using it, then it's fine. When I'm using this, it's that. So I would assume that it's something related to the software. Now, the only thing I would say is if the casing of the titanium isn't strong enough to withstand the heat from whatever's going on with the processor, then that may be an issue. So I don't know if they've tested that, when they were doing this fix to say, yeah, it's actually not the titanium, but you kind of have to sometimes say what you have to need to say to keep the truck moving, so to speak. But if they can't keep if this particular titanium isn't insulated enough that the heat from the processor is coming through, then that signals that it may be a bigger issue if this latest fix doesn't,
Right, right. The
bring this
only
all the
thing
way down.
I don't see why. I would assume. Well, I don't know nothing about titanium. Number one, but I'm assuming since if my phone feels lighter
Mhm,
than the previous, I don't know if it was aluminum. I don't know if it was metal. I'm not sure what what they touted iPhone 14 metal was. Maybe
mhm,
it was steel, stainless steel. I'm not sure. But all that to say, my phone definitely feels lighter than the 14 Pro Max. So my guess is the titanium, since it's being lighter, maybe it's more porous, maybe it does a better job of dissipating heat. That's what I would assume because it's lighter.
mhm,
I would assume a heavier metal would absorb heat versus dissipate it.
mhm.
But again, like I said, I don't know nothing about titanium. All I do know is Apple definitely does not want this to be a hardware issue. And even if it is a hardware issue, I'm pretty sure they'll say software, software, software,
Yeah.
software, as long as possible to get to a point to where if it is hardware, they could do something about it. I don't know, change the amount of titanium in the casing. That'll give them enough time to go to the manufacturers and be like,
Go
all
back to
right,
the
this
lab and like,
mixture,
"We need to tweak this."
right, this chemical measurement or whatever the case may be,
Mhm.
but until then, I'm pretty sure they're gonna kick the can down the road as long as
Yeah,
possible. Say, oh, it's software.
absolutely. Because nobody wants to have a recall on millions of their brand
Nope.
new, highly touted device.
Nope.
Nobody wants that kind of drama.
Nope. Absolutely. All right. Moving on to the next story I got in the lowdown. It seems like the UK users are getting a feature called connected cards in the Apple Wallet app. So basically, for the UK users, this new feature is rolled out. Of course, you can add cards to Apple Pay and then you can use your phone to make payments. But right now, the only features with adding a card, like a credit card or a debit card, to
Mhm,
Apple Wallet is the ability to make purchases. Now, the app does notify you or you get the option to turn on notifications when you actually use the card through Apple Pay, and it'll give
mhm,
you like a list of your transactions. But with the UK users, they're getting this connected cards feature that, in addition to just sending you notifications of just the transactions you make via Apple Pay, you'll just be able to see transactions of that card in general. So, in the ability to just swipe using Apple Pay, you'll get your latest transactions. And if it's like a debit card, you'll
mhm.
be able to see available balances as well. Right now, the only balance you can
Hmm,
see in the Apple Wallet is if you have an Apple Card or you use Apple Cash. You'll see the balance then.
mhm,
But like with the UK version of Apple Wallet, when they load a debit card and they've got an available balance in the wallet app, you'll see the available balance. And in addition to that, you'll see recent transactions, whether you used Apple Pay to make that transaction or not. So if you called and use your debit card online, that transaction will show up in this connected cards feature just for UK users. So
So
the
it
reason I
sounds like
go ahead.
is it I'm trying to make sure I understand it. So say if you have your Wells Fargo linked into your Apple Wallet, you don't
Hmm.
necessarily have to go into your Wells Fargo app to see your balance or to see what you spent on your Wells Fargo, say, debit card that you
Right.
have
Yep.
that you use for Apple Pay. Okay. All right.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. You'll be able to see all that from the wallet app. Now, this sounds like a grand old idea if you ask me, but United States is a little different than the UK. So my hope is that Apple is quote unquote testing this, working the kinks out, getting it squared away with the more rigid UK as users, the UK, the European Union, specifically as it relates to privacy, as it relates to all those things. Once they get it squared away, hoping, fingers crossed,
Mhm.
that this feature actually comes to the Apple Wallet. Because I do actually have a lot of credit cards loaded up in my Apple Wallet just because I don't want to be somewhere and need one of the cards.
Mhm.
And all I had to
Don't
do
have
was sit
access to it.
there. Right. But all I had to do was sit there for 1 minute and load it in there. And it would have been in
Mhm.
there forever.
Yeah.
So it's like, all right, well, why not put it in there? It's secure. I got Face ID, I've got a complex password, all these things. So I'm not necessarily concerned about somebody getting my phone and being able to use all my cards.
Right.
So it's like, well, if I'm not
It's
concerned
the
about
same to
that,
have them in your wallet. If your
r-
wallet gets stolen,
exactly. And I'm
there are
trying to
no
get
safeguards against that.
right. And I can't put all my cards in my physical wallet like I can in my virtual wallet. So it's like,
Right.
and why not put all my cards in there? So it'd be dope to not only just have the cards in there to be able to make transactions, but to see available balances and see recent transactions. I think that'd be dope. So definitely
Yeah.
hoping that comes to the United States as well. All right. So another story I had on there, I thought that was forgot about this until I actually saw this story. Back in the day, Apple did when the Apple Watch first came out. They did have some super expensive models of the Apple Watch. One in particular, it was actually encased in solid gold. So right now they've got aluminum, they've got stainless steel, which is the version I get. And then above that, they had a ceramic version. And then
Mhm.
even above that, they had a solid gold Apple Watch that cost about $17,000 if you got the high end watch with the solid gold, with the LTE, and you got a nice leather band or a nice metal band. You'd be up almost $20,000 for an Apple Watch back in the day. Since
When you
then,
can just get the gold one that I have,
Some
that just
people,
means,
some people actually wanted the real
I
deal, right?
guess I'm gonna go
So
with the
fast forward to
this
today,
deal.
nobody does that anymore. Apple just has the they have the Apple Watch SE, they have the Apple Watch regular, and then they have the Hermes edition that gives you expensive bands, expensive bracelets, but
Mhm,
there's no special metal outside of I think stainless steel that they use for the Hermes edition as well.
mhm.
So, but I'm pretty sure there's some people out there who actually purchased this $17,000 gold Apple Watch. So if you have, you better hurry up and try to get it fixed because basically what Apple has done is they have put the gold Apple Watch on the list of obsolete products back in September. So September 30th was the day that Apple said, all right, we're going to list the Apple Watch as obsolete. What that means is Apple themselves will
Mm,
no longer offer service. So even if you had, what do you call it? Apple Care,
mhm.
even though if you took great care of it, even though if you purchased it on your credit card and your credit card gives you some sort of insurance plan, even if that is the case, Apple is no longer repairing them themselves, or they're not providing parts to hardware repair shops to actually repair these devices. So if you've got a solid gold Apple Watch, of course, it can be updated because you need a newer one with better chips, whatever the
Yeah.
case may be. So it's probably got an old OS anyway, So I'm curious as to what people are going to do with these $17,000 Apple Watches that can no longer be updated and no longer even sold or repaired.
Put it in their watch case and just roll with it. Because if you're paying $17,000 for a watch, it's probably not your everyday watch anyway,
You probably wasn't using it
and
as a watch.
you probably weren't using it as a watch. It was probably a status symbol when it first came out. It was like, "Look at my fancy smancy, super expensive watch." They don't wear that thing no more. They
So,
don't no.
um, but I guess the difference between a let's just say like a Rolex. People recognize where Rolex.
Right,
And I'm pretty sure there's a $17,000 Rolex, right?
at least.
Even though Rolexes tend to keep, if not increase in value, my thinking between my thinking behind buying a $17,000 Apple Watch is because it does a little bit more than a Rolex would, right? You can
Mhm.
check your heart rate, you can check text messages, you can check emails, you can do all the little bitty things that a technologically watch can do that are traditional, watch equal to this price. So I would assume all that to say is I would assume that people would get more usage out of a expensive watch like this, which is making
Mm,
me surprised that Apple would actually discontinue it when my assumption is if you're going to buy a $17,000 Apple Watch, you're going to use it a little bit more. You're going to wear it a little bit more than you would like a statement, timepiece like a Rolex, to where you would only typically, I don't know. I don't have a Rolex. I don't think I know anybody with a Rolex. But my guess is, you've got a nice collection. You may wear your Rolex maybe once, twice, 3 times a year. Versus the Apple Watch, you need to check your heart rate, do your fitness. You just happen to have a expensive one, right? So I would assume that you would get more value out of a $17,000 Apple Watch, which would lead Apple to take care of it a little bit longer, but maybe not.
See, I think the complete opposite.
Okay.
First, it's an 8-year-old watch at this point.
Hmm.
Um, Again, to me, I would think that most people that are spending that kind of money on an Apple Watch, um, they got it like that, and
Right.
they probably own Rolexes. So they probably many of us who have Apple Watches, it's like our everyday
All day.
watch,
Mhm.
right? And they even, come with fancy bands that you can put on them if you want to dress it up. But my thought is you're probably if you have a $17,000 Apple Watch. Again, one, it's not your everyday watch. And two, you're probably changing it out for your, I'm going to a fancy dinner or I'm going to a black tie gala event. You're changing it out. I think, if you have that kind of money to spend for most people. Now there could be some, outliers who was like, I can't afford this, but I'm buying it. Now they may still wear it.
Mhm.
But I'm thinking for the clientele who were to likely purchase this, it is just, it was probably pretty good for the first couple years. I'll give it 3 years. But if you think about how often we switch our Apple Watches and
Mhm.
how thinking of what the Apple Watch technology was 8 years ago compared to the Apple Watch technology now, it's no real comparison. So they're probably not even getting the best benefits of an Apple Watch with that older version.
Yeah, and I think I don't, even if I had the money like that, let's just say I was a, Apple snob with $20,000 to spare.
Mhm.
I don't think I would buy a $20,000 Apple Watch.
We
Simply
get a new Apple
because,
Watch every year.
well, not just that, right? I would, one, buy a Rolex because they tend to keep their value longer. If I'm gonna
Mhm.
spend that much money on a watch, I'm going to want to keep it around for a long time, right?
Yeah.
I know, as a technologically inclined person, that an Apple Watch eventually is going to be out of date,
Mhm.
because it can't mechanically, technologically take all the new stuff that the new OSs are dumping down on
Right.
it, right? So eventually, you wasn't going to be able to update an Apple Watch go and past a certain OS date.
Right.
I'm going to want the latest and greatest OS to be able to do the new stuff, all the things
Right.
everybody's talking about. So I would probably spend what I'm spending now to get a nice Apple Watch. It's not the $400 one. It's a little bit nicer, but I still don't consider it to be like one of those timepiece things, because I know I'm going to have to get another one in order to keep it up, right? Versus a
Right.
Rolex, you keep that thing in your family for generations, and
Because it
somebody
just
will
tells
still come
time.
looking, right?
Yeah.
But and it just sells time, but always, if it's always going to be a conversation piece,
It's
it's
an
always
investment piece. Like some purses are investment pieces. It's
right,
an investment piece that is always going to still, if it's going to, at the minimum, be valued at what you bought it for.
right,
And in
right.
most cases, that value is going to increase over time. So
Right, right. So yeah, I while I ain't clocking nobody's pockets. If you got
nope.
it, you got it.
Ball
But
out.
yeah, but I wouldn't do it simply
No.
because I'm going to use my watch all the time,
Yeah.
and I'm going to want to use it with all the new bells and whistles. And if I can't get that, you can't guarantee that I can forever get updates from Apple. I'm not
Yeah.
spending $17,000.
No, thank you very much.
All right, all right. So moving on to the next, I got another piece of rumor information. It looks like the double tap feature that Apple talked about so much during the Wonderless event when they announced the Apple Watch Series 9 It looks like the double tap gesture is now live via the watchOS 10.1 public beta. So if you are willing to go do the public beta on your watch, probably on your phone as well, you'll probably need whatever corresponding OS, iOS public beta to match this. Maybe it's, I don't know what the betas are right now. Um, if you also can get watchOS 10.1, you'll be able to play around with this double tap feature for those who don't remember. If you're listening to music, if you're on a phone call, you're listening to a podcast, each of those different apps, the ability to take your two fingers, the arm, the hand that your watch is on, the ability to take your index and your thumb, tap them together real quick, and that gesture becomes a feature to be able to play applause music, hang up phone calls,
Take a phone
send
call.
messages,
Uh,
whatever the case may be. That feature was touted heavily with the new Apple Watch Series 9. For
mhm.
those of us who have the Apple Watch Series 9, we still have to wait for that feature to come out because Apple very sneakily mentioned or forgot to mention that the double tap feature won't be available at the launch of watchOS 10. So while we're
Yep.
still waiting, I brought this article up to say that there may be some what do you call it? Something at the end of the road, light at the end of the tunnel. That's
Mm.
what it is. Light at the end of the tunnel that it sounds like Apple's moving forward with this double tap feature. And since it's already on a public beta, that means it won't be too longer until we actually get this double tap feature. So, Nika, I guess my question to you is, once we finally get this double tap feature and we love it, will that convince you to go out and buy one, or are you still gonna wait?
It might. I'm
Right.
amenable to it.
Okay. All
Because
right.
again, like I said, when we talked about what we're going to buy, I mentioned that I'm definitely, wanting to get the Vision Pro, and one of the features of the Vision Pro is basically that's how you control the Vision Pro.
Okay.
Um, and after the announcement, I think I was getting my nails done, and so typically, getting your pedicure and getting your nails done, they're doing it at the same time. I was listening to a podcast and somebody called me or something, and I was trying to they were on my hand. I was like, oh, if I had double tap, I could just, continue my life without
Hmm.
all this extra stuff. So it may be worth the convenience to go ahead and get it. But I was like, there's no rush in me purchasing Series 9 because the Series 9 is basically my Series 8 until this double tap feature comes in. So
That will really be the only difference, really, because I've got a Series 8 and a Series 9, and I mean, same color, same shape, all the bands match. So
mhm,
physically, you cannot tell this thing apart from an 8 or a 9 at all.
yeah,
Maybe the cellular connectivity is better. I don't know. I really don't talk on my phone that much from my
yeah.
watch. Maybe the processor's faster. They claim they got this new chip in here.
Mhm.
I don't think I'm taxing it enough in order to use that functionality. So the
Yeah,
only thing I could think of that's going to make me feel like this thing's a little bit different is that double tap feature. So,
yeah.
but until now, well, not until now. For now, I'm still waiting. But like I said, I brought this up to mention that it seems like Apple's full speed ahead. So hopefully, we'll get this double tap feature very shortly.
Hopefully so.
Right. All right. So the last story I have in the lowdown, I just thought this was interesting. I wonder how this is going to affect the share price of Apple. But share price really has been kind of fluttering.
Mhm.
It came down a little bit when the Wonderlust event. I think it was like 180, but now it's down to 170 something. So all that to say, you add that up, the stock has kind of been just doing all right.
Mhm.
Tim Cook recently has sold over 500,000 shares that were valued at $87.8 million.
Mm.
After taxes and fees, Tim Cook goes home with over $46 million for sharing 500 shares of Apple stock.
So before
So
you go further,
go ahead.
look at that difference. That stock was valued at 87 million. He
Hmm.
only gets to take now. I say
Half.
only using that in air quotes, but he only gets to take home about 40 million. So about half of the money that
Mhm.
was rightfully his is going not to
To the
him.
government or to his brokerage or to,
Right.
his
Probably a combination of brokerage
Right.
fees and taxes, but
Right.
still half of that value is gone.
Yep,
You
yep.
don't have it no more.
So, yeah, he takes home, a little over $40 million. I'm assuming most of his salary was stock options, which is why he probably cashed out because maybe he needed some more money.
Yeah.
I'm curious as to how this is going to affect the stock price. Is it going to are people just looking at this as, oh, I mean, he's just taking some money that's his because his salaries and stock options, or are people saying, oh, Tim Cook is selling his shares? Does that mean something's going on with Apple? Is Apple on the ropes? Is there something about to hit it? Is the inflation? Is a recession? What's going on with Apple that Tim Cook has to all of a sudden sell all of these shares? Now, after this sale, he still owns 3.3 million shares of Apple
Shares.
stock, currently valued at 565
A
million.
half a
So
billion dollars.
he owns a $500 million in Apple stock. So him taking a little measly 41 million shouldn't
He probably about
surprise
to buy a new
anybody.
house. He's probably buying a new house.
Right, right. That ain't surprising nobody, as
Yeah.
far as comparatively speaking. But that is a lot of money. And I'm curious to know, is that just Tim Cook doing his thing, or is he letting on to something? Is the fourth quarter, third quarter for Apple gonna be bad? He's like, let me get my money now. What's going on? What do you think? Is this him just getting his money, or is something going on with Apple that we need to know about?
He about to buy a new house or a new boat,
Oh, okay.
in my humble opinion. Or maybe he probably already has like a family foundation where he donates money. 41
Mhm.
million out of a half a billion is chump change.
Right.
I think he's about to buy something. Now, had he taken more of that, then, that might be a little bit of a sign. But the fact that he still has over a half a billion um, worth of stock, I think he's just about to buy something. How we move, say maybe $5,000 from our savings or cash out 5,000 in stock to, you know, go on a trip or buy a Rolex. Um, that's all this man's doing. He's buying a Rolex.
Okay.
Whatever the Rolex version of uber rich people is, that's what he's about to do.
Okay. So this is his biggest sale since 2021. So what, 2 years earlier, Tim Cook offloaded another, or previously offloaded 355 million worth of Apple shares. The move, according to regulatory filing, was part of a prearranged something trading plan adopted last November. So the first one was almost like a scheduled event to where
Mhm.
everybody knew about it, regulatory finding, process some paperwork, whatever the case may be, and was finally, after all those dots, I's were dotted, T's were crossed, he was able to take this money. But they don't mention nothing about a regulatory filing. No, according to new regulatory findings. Imagine being so rich,
Mm.
and imagine you making a move like this has so many different domino effects that you have to get a regulatory finding just for get your own money. That's a lot of money.
And the article that we're talking about is from 9 to 5 Mac. It says Cook is believed to be well into the quote billionaire club.
Mhm.
So again, this man, like I said, he's about to buy whatever the equivalent of a Rolex is to super rich people.
All right, all right, all right. All right, so that's all I had for the lowdown. We're going to move right into second string where we talk tech in general, but this has a Apple lean to it a little bit. It seems like PayPal and Venmo, I don't know if they was trying to compete, but now they've kind of fallen in line, have now let users add cards from PayPal, from Venmo into Apple Wallet. I'm assuming prior to this, probably both PayPal and Venmo had their own ways that you can make, phone transactions. I've never used them, so I don't know
Mhm.
how you do that. I just assumed, I mean, I know because I have them. I know PayPal has a debit card, so I would just
Mhm.
assume that you can add that in the Apple Wallet, but I guess that wasn't the case. Same thing with Venmo. You can, on both PayPal and Venmo, you can use their app, you can use their processes to actually buy things, or they sent you an actual debit card. If you had that much money in your PayPal or your Venmo account, you can use that debit card against it. But for whatever reason, up until now, they was not letting you add those debit cards into Apple Wallets. But now I guess you can. PayPal is finally getting on board with the change, announcing that you can now add it and Venmo's credit and debit cards to your Apple Wallet as part of their motivation for the expansion. The company cites a 2022 survey that found that 42% of people in the United States have used a mobile wallet. So it sounds like, I'm assuming Venmo, PayPal is the parent company of Venmo. I didn't know that. But
Really? Interesting.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But at any rate, if you have a PayPal business account or you have been issued a Venmo branded debit card, you still won't be able to add those to the Apple Wallet. You'll just be able to add a basic Venmo account to it, and then the basic regular PayPal, account to
Mhm.
add those to the wallet. So, like seems like people are the dragging companies kicking and screaming, but eventually I guess they're starting to quote unquote see the light,
Yeah.
and that Apple Pay and maybe Samsung and Google Pay are the three main vehicles that people are using to make mobile charges, and they're not using Venmo, they're not using PayPal, maybe Cash App. Cash App is probably one of the ones to where you Cash App stuff without going into these mobile wallets. But even then, you can add your Cash App to your Apple Wallet and make credit card purchases that way. So I'm still trying to figure out what PayPal and Venmo was thinking. They was gonna beat it, or I don't know what they were.
They were probably thinking, "We got our own, we don't need them. We're gonna try and get the adoption of people using our
Our
mobile
proprietary
wallet."
stuff.
Right, and then they realized, 1, people are using Apple Pay and Google Pay and not thinking about you.
I
2,
ain't thinking about PayPal Pay or
nope.
Venmo Pay.
Nope, and the
Now
amount
they'll
of money
probably
they were
send
probably the amount of money they were probably spending on resources, research and development, developers, all these things, they probably realized we are just wasting money because 1, we don't have the usage, and 2, it's expensive to try and keep these things going. So it's like, fine, we'll go over there.
but I mean, am I more inclined to use PayPal or Venmo now I can use Apple Pay? I would assume so. Especially
And
like
maybe
you
that's the
mentioned.
realization they came to.
Right, right. And especially like you mentioned, the time and the resources it takes to run your own, mobile or digital wallet, whatever the case may be. Is that enough? Like you said, are people are people figuring out how to use PayPal and Venmo if they can't use Apple Pay? Or are they just not using PayPal and Venmo once they figure out they can't use Apple Pay?
They're probably just not using it. So it's
They're
probably
probably
like
just
they're
not
like,
using it.
"Let's slide on over here and,
Right. So
get this
PayPal,
usage."
yeah. So PayPal, Venmo's, yeah. We need to capture those transactions. So however we capture them is however we capture them. And if people are using Apple Pay, then so be it.
Yep.
All right. So that is all I had for that. We're gonna move into for the culture. We talk all things, whatever we want to talk about. This one hits a little close to home. It is out of Atlanta.
Mhm.
There is a Fearless Fund that was created for Black women entrepreneurs to get the startup capital that they need. This Fearless Fund was offering 20,000 a clip, part of their Fearless Strivers grant to Black women entrepreneurs. So every Black female entrepreneur that got approved or went through the process got $20,000 to help them with their entrepreneurial endeavors. Well, I guess either $20,000 was either too much, or more importantly, because it was set up specifically and exclusively for Black women, that there's some people out there that wasn't trying to hear all that. and they pushed forward and actually were able to get a judge to halt or bar the Fearless Fund from granting or awarding these grants to Black women founders on the, I guess, discrimination tip that since
So
they were
yeah,
exclusively giving these grants to Black women, that it violated some arbitrary Civil
affirmative
Rights Act
action.
of 1866.
Yeah.
And some they went that far back to use that as ammunition to stop these Black women entrepreneurs from getting 20 measly $1,000. So I wanted
Yeah.
to bring it to you, since you are a female entrepreneur, have dabbled in the startup game, specifically in Atlanta, where this Fearless Fund is headquartered. I wanted to get your take on this new ruling. How does this affect you, and just in general, how you feel about it?
So I'm very familiar with this fund. They've had events at the Gathering Spot, which I'm a member of as well. And the same guy who brought up the lawsuit to get rid of affirmative action and college hiring is the
Hmm.
same person that is behind this. And people thought that, oh, this is where he's going to stop. No, this person and their organization's goal is to essentially strip away any benefit from anybody other than, basically, let's just be honest, then you're white.
Right.
They threw in Asian students as well to kind of mask their bigotry
Hmm.
behind this. But we all know what it is. So the issue is I think there's an injunction to halt any more distribution of the award.
Hmm.
But it's perfect. It's important to realize that these are $20,000 grants. Um, Only 2% of Black women get venture capital funds. So if you have a startup, if you are a founder and you're trying to get money to fund your business, you're likely not going to get it from anywhere else other than a fund similar to Fearless Fund
Catering directly to you.
to you.
Hmm.
And it's one of those things where, again, we've mentioned before when we've talked about startups and Black people, you have to have a damn near finished, perfect product to even get
Profitable product.
profitable, to get even the bare minimum from most um,
Venture
VCs.
capitalists, yeah.
Right. So it comes to the point where this guy, I think it's Ed Bloom or something like that, he's targeting Black women specifically. Even more so, we're talking about the Fearless Fund, but I think just today, an email went out from a company called Hello Alice, who awards funds as well, similar to Fearless. But for them, they award money to a cross section of groups. But this Hello Alice was specifically targeted because they did one partnership. I don't, don't get me the line. It was through another company. I don't know if it was Home Depot or someone else. I have to look it up. But this partnership they had, it gave out $25,000 grants to, I think, 10 um, Black women businesses.
Mhm.
So this company has been giving out money to men, women, POCs, other underrepresented groups. Haven't said boo,
Mhm.
but the key factor for them that they're now going after Hello Alice is specifically because of the award, the $25,000 awards that they were giving specifically for Black women.
Mm.
So they, at this point, it now seems that they are specifically, maybe they have a roadmap of which ethnic minority group or underrepresented group they're going to come after. And right now, it's just time for Black women. So they're going after all the things that affront money to help Black women businesses. Black women are the first up. And honestly, that's not surprising. We've seen, people coming after, Kamala Harris. Now, the latest senator that was appointed from Dianne Feinstein's death, LaFonza Butler. So in every pretty much ad you see, it's like voting for Joe Biden is voting for Kamala Harris to be president. So it's one of those things where Black women, we saw what happened with Stacey Abrams. It's like Black women are specifically being targeted before, but even more so now when it comes to the empowerment, the business side, the entrepreneurial side, the economic growth and wealth of Black women, because we know in many instances Black women are the heads of lots of households. And if Black women can get this wealth and start creating generational wealth, it's going to trickle down, it's going to go into other ways. And it's like, nope, we got to nip this in the bud. We can't let these Black women get these, I won't say
Get smart,
measly,
get smart,
but
and make some money.
right, because I say measly not to diminish the amount that the Fearless Fund or Hello Alice or any of these others giving. It's I say measly in comparison
Mhm.
to the millions, the tens of millions, even in some instances the hundreds of millions that are given to companies that are not Black and are not women.
Mhm.
So it's one of those things where it feels, maybe because I am a Black woman, I have been in that space. It's one of those things where it feels
Like a
personal.
personal attack, yeah.
Yeah, that they are specifically coming after Black women founders or Black women trying to create and start businesses. And, again, like I said, this I think is just the beginning, because there are many other companies that have, parts of their business that are earmarked for certain groups. They're earmarked for Black people, they're earmarked for Black women, they're
HBCUs
earmarked
or
for HBCUs, they're earmarked
mhm,
for the LGBTQ community. It's
mhm,
earmarked for certain communities.
mhm.
And when this guy came after college admissions and people like, yeah, that's right, go for it. The the overarching issue that always occurs is it's just not your turn yet. They haven't come for you. They're coming for this group, but once they get them knocked out, trust and believe they are coming for you as well if you don't fit their mold. And what their mold appears to be is white, straight, Christian men.
Okay, alright.
So if you're not in that pocket of people who already have an enormous amount of influence and wealth, if you're outside of that bubble, they're coming for you. It's just they haven't gotten to you yet. And
So
people cheerlead for the people that they're coming for now, not realizing they're, digging their own grave as well.
right, so let me ask this,
Mhm.
back to the Fearless Fund. If you are the CEO of the Fearless Fund, what are you doing? Are you fighting this possibly all the way to the Supreme Court? Or are you seceding, but making sure that your fund isn't exclusionary, or make sure your fund doesn't have any sort of exclusionary language. Make sure you are following along with the rules and regulations of what's being put down as far as this injunction. But are you fighting the good fight, or are you going to play ball just like everybody else is doing? Because you mentioned that for whatever reason, I mean, being rhetorical here, that Black women aren't getting the funding regularly, normally. So it has to be a reason behind that, and if they can't get the money in regularly, now they can't even give the money to themselves,
Yeah.
which seems purpose purposeful,
You
like you
can't even give
mentioned.
away your own money. Like,
Right, can't even give away your own money
what?
who you want to give it to, right? So I guess the question is, knowing that, do you fight the good fight and make sure that you are legally protected to give your money to whoever you want to give your money to proudly and boldly? Or are you under the table figure out how to get the job done and, still secede to the idea that you can't be called, or you can't say you're giving money to Black women?
Yeah. So I think it has to be a two-pronged, well, a multi-pronged approach. Definitely. Unfortunately for Fearless Fund, they're at the front of this. So they're probably going to have to take, well, not have to, they're probably going to take the biggest hit financially to move this up through the Supreme Court. And even still, once they get to the Supreme Court, knowing that they still may likely lose because it heavily favors, the Supreme Court heavily favors 6-3 um, conservative. And this is the same Supreme Court that allowed this guy Edward Bloom to cancel out affirmative action in college
Admissions hiring.
admissions.
Yeah.
Right. So it's already, the Supreme Court route. I mean, they're probably going to take it, but they already know it may be a dead end. The other thing is, I've seen people talking on social media. It's like we may have to take it off grid a little bit to be able to do how, because if you think about it, if Black women are currently only getting 2% of VC money, then this other, let's just make it round and say 90%, because we have other segments of population as well. This other 90% that's being given out, what are they doing? What is their determination that they are using to give this money? So is
Mhm.
it just say, hey, the fund is open to everybody, but they still only give it to Black people or Black women?
Mhm.
That's an option, because obviously that's what a lot of these other VCs are doing is, hey, anybody can apply to get money from us, but we just only give it to the people we want to.
Mhm.
So the thing is, the only other option is, well, I guess one of the options is to acquiesce and say, okay, fine, we won't specifically cater to Black women, but wink, wink, nudge, nudge, we
Mhm.
still are. But taking that route, it'll probably get you where you want to go, but their vision statement,
Mhm.
I'm sure, is around specifically providing empowerment to Black women entrepreneurs. I don't know if that's their mission statement. I'm sure it's something, in that range. Um, and their whole identity, what these Black women
Mhm.
have worked so hard to create,
Mhm.
again, as Black folks, we have to acquiesce to get half as far for doing twice as much. And it's one of those things where, do you want to take that moral hit, that heart hit of saying, my mission isn't valuable enough for people to appreciate and understand, but we still want to make sure that these Black women get their money? So it's those things, it's those hard questions, those hard choices that not only Fearless Fund is going to have to make, but the other funds that this guy is going to come after next. Because once he gets Fearless Fund, whatever the outcome is, quote unquote, settled, he's going to go to the next fund. And if, like I mentioned, the Hello Alice thing, they've already started. It's kind of like, once we get one rolling, that's good. We got that kind of set, let's go and pick up another one, and it's going to keep going. And it's one of those things where, do you or do these funds ultimately have to just say, you know they won, from the
You
perspective of
Mhm.
how we give away our money, but we still give it away we want, but the perception is that they won. The
Mhm.
perception is that what we envisioned our company or envisioned our fund to be
They made us
is
change it.
invalid. Right.
Mhm.
And really, that's what is, you're invalidating someone's personhood. You're saying to Black women, you're not important enough to
For us to
have.
right these wrongs.
Right. You're not
Mhm.
important enough to be funded. You're not important enough to be elevated or exalted or even celebrated. The only way you can get what you need or what you want is through the back door, is through
Mhm.
undercover. And that's taken us back to Jim Crow. That's taken us back to segregation, when we had things and we were able to do things, but it was under the cover of night. It wasn't being able to live out loud, boldly, fearlessly. And I wonder if that's why they named it Fearless Fund, to be able to own who you are and be proud of who you are and what you've accomplished. Because in order to succeed, in order to get where you're going, you have to duck and cover, you have to hide, you have to go the back way. You can't go in through the front door, you can't drink from the white water fountain. You have your own You have to go in through the back door of the theater. You have to sit in the top. You can't, Hattie McDaniel, you can't go to the award ceremony to get your Oscar. We're not even going to give you a real Oscar. We're going to give you a plaque that says you have an Oscar. You're going to get the diminished version of what you've earned, what you should have, what is properly yours. And so that, especially for Black women, that's a heart thing. And that goes to the heart of, how you feel about yourself, how you value yourself, what you're teaching your children to believe about themselves. Because now we had all this empowerment, but now your children are going to come up to see that. I mean, they didn't think enough of us to allow us to continue to do this. They made us do this, they made us do that. So it really goes to the heart of things when it comes to validation and affirmation of who you are as a person.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's a tough one because,
Yeah.
like you said, me personally, I would try to be petty and be like, all right, cool. I'll acquiesce and then figure out how to boldly give it any other way. But again, like you
Mhm.
mentioned, it's the fearless fun for a reason.
Yeah.
Ain't no sense to be scared now.
Yeah.
We call the fearless fun. So
Yeah.
I can definitely understand fighting this as long as hard as you can, even if, it still may not, you may not get the desired
Yeah.
reaction that you're looking for, but you fought.
Yep.
All right. That is it for the culture. We're going to move into the hookup. This is something that's personal, but I thought I would share just in case. A couple weeks back, I could not figure out, and I maybe even mentioned it on the show. I couldn't figure out how to get my camera from doing these reactions on the camera. Now, if you're
Ooh,
listening
can
to
I
this,
pause you for a minute?
go
For
ahead.
1 second? I do wanna correct what I said about the $25,000 awards. It was through Progressive Insurance.
Oh,
Um,
instead of
and,
Home
uh,
Depot.
it was Progressive Insurance. It was $25,000 grants to 10 small Black-owned 10 Black-owned small businesses for the purchase of a commercial vehicle. So that's
Mhm.
where they are being under this whole thing. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that I had the right language. Okay, back to
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
hookup.
yeah.
Yep.
All right. So yeah, like I was mentioning, this be sometimes I may get handsy and make some gestures in the camera that would then pop up these reactions on the screen. I could not figure out where it was coming from. I don't know if my camera has its own software. So I dug through the camera trying to find some gestures or some reactions. I dug through our streaming software that we actually use to record the show visually, via video and via auto. I dig through the streaming software services settings, could not figure out how to turn off these quote unquote gestures. Come to find out, it is actually in FaceTime because even though I have a camera connected to my Mac and I'm not using FaceTime whatsoever, your Mac is still showing that there's a camera connected, and you can actually, even still, even if you're not using FaceTime, you can actually have to go into the FaceTime settings to turn off these video reactions. Once I went through and did that, worked just fine. So for
Wait,
those,
so
yeah.
the things that the balloon and stuff we were seeing,
Uh-huh.
it
So try
wasn't
with your
from
thumb. So you can't, for those listening, you won't be able to see this, but Nica is gonna do either thumb or then do a peace symbol or something because that's the one that would pop up for me. But
well, because I know I did it for me one time when I was doing
uh
something, but it wasn't. But yeah.
so basically,
Huh.
with FaceTime on a Mac and on an iPad and on an iPhone, you have the option to turn on and off these video reactions. And what the video reactions do, like I mentioned, if you put up, there's a couple of them. If you put up the OK signal, if you put up your two finger symbol, put up your thumb, it'll get different sort of reactions. I did not want those on my screen while I'm trying to record a podcast.
Because it was
So I couldn't,
balloons.
right, right. So I couldn't figure out how to tone those off until I finally figured it out. And basically, what you have to do is you have to open the FaceTime app. You don't have to actually make a phone call from iOS. Basically, you open a FaceTime app, and then once the FaceTime app is opened, you reveal the control center by swiping down from the top right side. You'll see the control panel, and then there should be an option in the control panel while you have FaceTime running that says video effects. If you tap the video effects, it'll give you a couple of different settings. setting at the bottom is the reactions. You can turn on and off individual reactions, or you can turn reactions off altogether by just tapping the reactions button. So that's what I did for my iPhone and for my iPad. For the Mac, open the FaceTime app like you normally would, and then in the top menu bar, there'll be a green camera that's letting the Mac is letting you know that there's an app open that's recording video and or audio. So you click on that green camera, it'll show the reactions option as well, and then you can just click the reactions icon on and off. Or once you turn it on, you can actually go in there and actually select which specific gestures you want to be able to work. Like I said, for this, since I don't use FaceTime on my Mac hardly at all, I definitely don't want to control any gestures while I'm recording podcasts. So I actually went and turned those off. So that is my hookup for the week. If you don't want or don't need to see any sort of gesture reactions while you're in FaceTime, you can go into the menu of both your iPhone or your iPad while while FaceTime is running, and actually turn off the reactions option in FaceTime. So that is it for this week. Nika, if you don't have anything else for the show, definitely tell the folks where they can find you.
You can find me at Tech Savvy Diva on pretty much everywhere on the internet.
All right. And you can find me at Brother Tech. That's BROTHATECH. You can interact with our show by going to snoboscast.com. You can go there, listen to the latest episodes, download the latest episodes in your favorite podcast player, find out how you can interact with us via social media, or find out how you can support us financially. You can do all that again by going to snoboscast.com. And I think that is it. So until next week, we are out. Peace.
Bye, everybody.